Welcome to Stay Sparked. On this show, we explore how to stay inspired in the modern world with the most profound lessons from Burning Man, psychedelics, relationships, entrepreneurship, spirituality, travel, and more.
On today's episode of Stay Sparked, we talk about dating and relating in the modern age. We touch on topics from sharing where we've come from and what was modeled to us by our parents. We talk about polyamory, monogamy, long-term partnership, dating. We share some of the tools and resources that have helped us on our journey of being in partnership and in the dating world.
We talked a lot about communication and trust. We talked about couples therapy, how relationships are powerful tools for growth, and explored new relationship models in the modern world. Enjoy the episode. Thank you, Dub Sutra, for that beautiful intro song. Welcome to Stay Sparked. We are three friends who have been having powerful conversations and have decided that we should be having these in public. So we welcome you to join us. My name is Halcyon. I am the host of the Hug Nation YouTube channel, and I'm joined by, first, Betsy, who is the author and creator of the Power Affirmation Journal. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you so much, Halcyon.
And also Janus, who is the owner and CEO of NuWorld Nutritionals, who brings mushroom-based supplements to help heal the world. Welcome, Janus.
Thank you for having me, you guys.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you guys here. We like to start with a little bit of gratitude. So, Betsy, would you share something that you're grateful for?
Yes. I will share my gratitude for the recent rains we've had here in San Diego. It has just been so powerful to experience the wild nature, especially here where we've been sort of dry. And so we've got a lot of rain, and it finally cleared yesterday and today, and just really puts things in perspective around the gift of sunshine. So appreciating the rain too. Yep.
Yes. Although there was a river that I had to drive through that made me question the value of rain for just a few moments, but yay for rain. Janus, what is something you're grateful for?
Similarly to that, I am grateful for abundance that is kind of coming through so far this year, and that's in kind of all levels. Like we've had an abundance of rain lately, and there has just been an abundance of in my life of good friends and business opportunities and good communication as well. So I'm feeling very abundant. I'm very present and aware to the abundance that is kind of flowing around me these days at the moment. So yeah, definitely have a lot of gratitude for that.
Yes. And I will share some gratitude for the women in my life. I'm finding that I'm surrounded by teachers, and I've noticed that the ones that are bringing me the most powerful lessons, and I'm feeling the most humbled by wisdom and directions that I need to hear and learn from and be role modeled, is from the women in my life. So I'm super grateful for them. Mm-hmm. And speaking of women and men and others and connections, today we're going to be talking about a new model, new ways of relating. Last week we talked about how we have each found our ways to new ways of career and work. And this week we're going to be talking about how the models of relationships in all different ways are kind of breaking apart, and we're finding new ways of relating. So we wanted to talk about the way it has to be or should be into the ways that work for us.
Here we are in 2023, and I keep feeling like there's just more and more people that I see and know that are exploring relationships in new and different ways beyond monogamy, and just really even within monogamy, seeing couples that are creating new ways of cultivating intimacy. And there's just so much more accessibility these days to support and to workshops and trainings and communication. And, we live in a time where there's a lot of evolution happening within relationship dynamics. And so I think I'd actually love to instigate a little curiosity from you guys around the divorce generation. Right. I know I personally was raised by a mom and dad that were divorced when I was 1. And it seems very common. So curious, maybe we could start there. Are you guys parents together? Did they separate? What's your history in that?
Well, with me, real quick, like my parents were never together. So there was no there was no divorce model. And I'm wondering how this worked for you, Betsy, because I mean, by the time, they're divorced when you're one, like that's just that's normal for you by the time your awareness comes around. So that's kind of was my situation as well. So I never really had a I would see the traditional marriage model from my a lot of my friends growing up, but not growing up in that. That didn't necessarily strike me as like that had to be that had to be the way that people related. Like, oh, you get married and you stay married. It's like I think I'm one of the from a slightly older generation, but still, I mean, we're all in the same generation, but I never really felt like that was like we were told that was the baseline normal. I didn't necessarily think that even as a child. I was like, okay, well, there's lots of different ways to go about that. So so the whole divorce aspect didn't really land like on my lap from in my life. So
My experience is quite different. So my parents are still together, and I grew up in a suburban community where almost everyone's parents were still together. And so it was a pretty big deal if someone had separated parents. And then when I got to be more college age, a number of my friends' parents did split. A lot of them were in the we're going to stay together for the kids kind of model. And so I did witness a lot of what looked like family units, but were together because of the agreement that they had in place, not because of real bonds or trust or anything like that. So I think, and as we're talking, I wonder, that's interesting, because I almost all of my relationships for my entire life have been open to some degree, have been non-monogamous in some degree. And I think one of the things that I really fought in early on, even if I was in a relationship that we didn't practice and didn't see other people outside of our relationship, it was always very important for me to not be bound by contract, to not be staying together because of some agreement, but instead be together because we chose to. And I wonder, it's the first time I've been thinking about it, that perhaps it's because I saw so many people that were living because of an agreement more than love even.
Wow, interesting to kind of look back and consider where we've come from and how it may have shaped how we relate now.
Well, what about you, Betsy? I mean, being a child of divorce, I mean, do you feel not whether it did, but how much impact would you say that had on shaping your views of just relationship?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really considered how it's impacted my relationships, because you're right, it was so normal for me. That was just how it was. My dad was the weekend dad. My mom had us during the week, me and my sisters. And it was just the way things were. And then my dad was remarried and he had a wife. And so there was this whole other model of relationship through my teenage years. And I personally have spent a large percentage of my adult life in long-term, primarily monogamous relationship. I would say more time in relationship than not. Since I was 16, I was in a 2.5 year relationship, and then I was in a 3 year relationship, and then shortly after that, 4.5 year, and then the longest has been a 5.5 year relationship. And so I feel like maybe in a way that has impacted me to want to explore deep, intimate relationship and to cultivate longevity. Maybe because my mom and dad didn't. But really, I do feel like what I got to see with what my mom and dad modeled to me is that it's okay to part if it's not aligned. And so in most of my long-term relationships, they were mutual breakups. I don't even like that word. We did uncoupling, conscious uncoupling, where we both realized that it was not aligned after trying for some time. And so perhaps maybe that did have an influence on me to see like that it's okay that we don't have to go for the long haul, the sort of idea that we have to be with the same person for our whole life.
That is such a significant uh, permission, to recognize that a relationship does not have to be forever. And if I look back at my relationships, it is so clear that each relationship was needed for me to grow to be in the person that I could be in the next relationship. I mean, I am such a better partner than I used to be. So thank you, all my exes and my former partners, for the patience to help me grow. But none of them were relationships that could have possibly lasted a lifetime. It's just, we just weren't. We grew in different ways.
Yeah. I think we've gotten to the point where, and I think we've been there for a little while, where we don't view the end of a romantic relationship as a failure. Like it's a chapter. And it's a chapter that ideally, like you're saying, Halcyon, like it allows you to experience a level of growth that just, helps to, inform and shape you to be a better person overall, not just for the next person that you date, but just for you and your overall life's journey. I think that's primarily what our relationships are supposed to be. Is they're vehicles to help make us better people. And then we learn how to relate to a specific person who plays a specific role in our lives. That just allows you to kind of take those lessons and apply them to how you relate to others and the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. And, to honor the choice that a lot of people actually do commit to the lifelong journey of partnership. And I really celebrate the people that have found their partner, that they know that they're going to go through whatever fire comes their way, to be able to just keep growing through it. That's a really beautiful, courageous path to commit to. And I have noticed that if I'm talking to a couple that says they've been together for, say, 20 years or 30 years, the response is always like, wow, really? Wow, you've been together for that long? Wow. Because I don't really know that many people that have been together for that many years. And my question always to those couples is, what's the secret to your longevity? What is that? And there's always different answers, but some of the answers that I've heard that I always just remember is, one is space in the togetherness, that they allow each other to go do things on their own and to have their own spaces. And then the other was which is a concept I've been considering around not expecting the other person to give them all of the things that they need. Right. And so,
Yeah.
like, I really contemplate that a lot around like this sort of pressure, because I've done that in the past, and unknowingly, as you said, Halcyon, it's like the partner that I was many years ago has learned so much from the journey, right, of expecting that my primary partner is going to fill all of my needs intellectually, romantically, the support, emotional support, spiritually, sexually, all of the things. And that's a lot for one person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on what you said, Betsy, about a little bit more on how much I respect and the value of that true commitment. I went to a couples counselor, when I was in a relationship that was having difficulty, and we'd been together 2 years. And as we sat down with the counselor, he's like, "You're not married? Well, why are you here?" Like, if you're dating, that's so you can figure out who you can make things work with. My job is a marriage counselor. I'm going to help you figure it out when you have no choice, when you have to make it work. That's when, that's when the real lessons happen. And I was like, damn, like, and I really think that there's something to that. Like, there is a whole nother level of spiritual growth that happens when you do not have the option of leave, or you do not give yourself the option to leave when things are hard. So much respect to the people that are doing that. And, I went through a period where I couldn't imagine, having a long-term relationship. I couldn't imagine being like my parents. And now I'm like, boy, I kind of wouldn't mind growing old with somebody. That would be pretty awesome.
You hear that, ladies out there?
Yeah. I mean, there is definitely an appeal. I mean, it's certainly the older I get, the more I see that there is something to that, and the idea of, spending that amount of time and really growing old alongside with somebody else. Several years ago, there's I had a friend of mine who is my age now, in his 50s, and he was like, and he was quite the playboy cavalier, and really just a charming mofo. So he had so he just was like running through the ladies and having a great old time. But he said he kind of did that, and that's fun and that's cute. But you get to a certain point in your life where you're like the old person at the party, and there's a saying in like hip hop circles, like you never want to be the oldest person at the club. You always want to. If you're the oldest person at the club, then you're in the wrong club. And my friend's point, like in a lunch we had, he was like, "Don't be me." He's like, I kind of frittered away. I did the whole, dashing playboy archetype thing as long as I could do it until it just wasn't cute anymore. And now here I am alone and wondering like what am I going to do with my life as far, because I really want relationship. And good news, happy ending, is that you're never too old for that. So you can always I'm also currently in the best relationship I've ever had, and that that didn't happen until this stage of my life. So it's never too late to like experience that thing you're wanting to experience, in relating.
Well, and also, which is kind of the topic that we're on, is that growing old with someone doesn't necessarily mean growing old in a monogamous relationship. There we are having all different types of ways that you can grow old with people, with different types of agreements and different types of there are people who are growing old as polycules, and houses with full of people, and there was a time when I was wondering, what's it going to be like when I grow old, and someone was like, "Well, won't you have your theme camp around you to take care of you, when you're an old man?" And I was like, I guess that's a
Ooh.
possibility too,
And you know what? It's so amazing the time that we're living in, because there's so much resource. And there's been a lot of exploration of people that have been, writing books about this new way of relating. Polysecure is a book that has just mapped out all these different ways of opening the relationship. It's not just black and white. There's just so many different ways that people do it. And I feel like not so long ago, this type of relating might have been, shamed, or you have to keep it behind closed doors. But now there's even meetups. I'm seeing meetups people are having to have conversations. So that way it can become more graceful in the process of discovering what works for you, because it's going to be different for each person. Mm-hmm.
And we should acknowledge, which we talked about before this, we are not experts in this field. We are discussing this topic because it is relevant. We will put some links in the show notes of some resources that we find to be of people who are should be listened to in terms of this path of growth.
Yes, and I'd love to actually touch on something before we keep going, on something you mentioned around that commitment of long-term partnership. Something that I have found a lot of value in some of my previous relationships is a practice called hand fasting. It's a pagan Celtic tradition where you are married essentially for 1 year and 1 day at a time. And that was really powerful for me and my partner at the time, because it gave us that commitment to really see through to the end of that each year. And so no matter what would come up within that year, even when we hit some of these really major road bumps, we were committed. We were like, all right, we're going to have to get through this, because we made our agreements and we made our vows. And multiple times that really helped us to find our way through into the big breakthrough that was needed to happen. Otherwise, if we didn't have that commitment, we may have just been in fight or flight and just like left and be like, whatever. And then likely, of course, what happens is we repeat the pattern with another partner. And so that practice was really helpful. And then each year we got a chance to check in. Do we want to renew our hand fasting agreement? And then we would check in, and we did it for 4 years. And then on the final year, we both were kind of like, oh, I don't think I really want to. And then we slowly started to unwind our relationship. And it was really powerful to have that framework to be able to keep coming back to, not only for the support of the commitment, but also for me, I love ceremony. I think ceremony is such an important part of life. And, weddings are so beautiful, right? When people get married, it's such a celebration and such an opportunity to the clarification of values and vows and devotion, right? Like I think it would be so amazing if people would get married every 5 years or I actually know some people that they do every 10-year kind of
Hmm.
journey. And so I
Yeah,
just really want to share that here.
that is a powerful framework for a relationship for sure. I know a number of people that do that, and having that idea, that year long commitment, does allow you to really like, all right, well, we're only even if you're in it, like, and it's really not going well. It's like, okay, well, we only have another 5 months. We can work this out, or that you've got that you're going to really revisit this whole commitment thing, and that kind of takes a burden off, takes a weight off, and it's almost like it kind of works, it kind of like sneaks around. It kind of comes at it from a sneaky direction, allows you to bring some ease into relationship and be like, okay, so it's only 5 months, not that big of a deal. And then there's this lightness, and all of a sudden that thing you're struggling with doesn't seem like such a struggle anymore. You're able to get through it, you're able to drop it. And by the time that 5 months comes around, you're bouncing, you got your pep, you got your pep in your step back, and it's like, yeah, we can do this. So it's just taking the weight off. It's a good way to take the weight off of a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it gives us an opportunity to receive support, ask for support.
Mhm.
Because if we get through that and then it like repeats again in a month or two, because that can happen in relationship, is like, oh, we just keep hitting the same roadblock. What is that? Why does this keep happening? That's when you call in the support, right? Get some coaching or some guidance or do some deeper personal growth work, right? And then at the end of that year, it's like, yeah, we haven't actually come to a breakthrough on it, and I don't think we're going to. This is the
Mhm.
time for a split, but maybe not.
Yeah, it can go a lot of different directions for sure.
Mhm.
You mentioned coaching or couples therapy, and I just want to say I've had really positive experiences bringing in a outside party to help with communication when things are tough. I think that I've never done a year commitment idea. I think that would be fantastic for me, because sometimes when things get tense, the problem, the issue, the thoughts start to come like, I can't deal with this forever, but one of the ways, so the handfast, I think, is a great way to get through it. Another way is to have somebody who can help interpret the words and help slow down the conversation and help, are you hearing what is being said over here? And I think both people, often you go because you want to get a referee who's going to say that you're right. But if it's a good therapist, they get you to a place where you're communicating in a way where you're listening, and often finding that the tension is not where you think it is, and there are ways to get to a place of harmony that if you can find the compromises and find the ways to see each other in the way that they need to be seen.
Mhm. And to kind of put a bow on the couples therapy thing, one, I've noticed just among my friends, and I have seen this like corroborated elsewhere, just the one thing that for couples that who ended up not, who ended up calling it quits for various reasons after a certain time, and also went through couples therapy, they all said they'd wish, like all of them, 100% of them, that the couples that broke up, all of them said they wish they had started couples therapy sooner than they did. And because a lot of times it's like, why are we going to couples therapy? This is a 6-month relationship so far. It's too early for that. It's never too early for that. I mean, you definitely want your relationship to have a certain ease and flow, but if you're really feeling like you want to be with this person, it doesn't matter how long you're in it. If you're really feeling like, wow, we've got some real hurdles that we're having trouble navigating, it's never too early to start talking with somebody. And a lot of relationships can be saved by just getting it out there, having that third party to really kind of witness you and give you a different perspective.
Yes.
It's valuable, and it's never too early to consider that.
Totally. It's preventative medicine.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
I like to consider like shifting even the term of couples therapy to couples coaching,
Mm.
right? Because couples therapy is like, oh, we're going to couples therapy. That means that like something's wrong. We need to fix something.
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
like
like couples,
physical therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
couples coaching is like, hey, let's just enhance. Let's like keep, this going well. And that's actually one of the biggest things that I've recently come to, because um my previous partner would refer to it as grains of sand, right? There's a couple of grains of sand, and then we're like, okay, well, let's just keep going. And then there's another grain of sand, grain of sand, and then it's builds up, builds up, builds up, right? And then it's like this mountain that we're under, and then we're like expecting a couple therapy sessions to help on like clear all of that, and it's just a lot. It's a lot. And so yeah, that was a really important takeaway from my most recent partnership, is to start early, to really go into receiving support, receiving inspiration, whether that is psychological coaching, mindset kind of things, or intimacy coaching, different types of coaching to help to support these kinds of maybe sometimes hard conversations, which, one I'll actually bring up that I think is kind of related to what we're talking about, is that it feels like everybody has this an innate attraction to all kinds of different people, right? Whether it's like just spontaneous, like, wow, that person is so beautiful. And I have experienced that, like, oh, it's not safe to say to my monogamous partner that I think that person's beautiful. And so I'll just keep it to myself and feel shameful about having an attraction that I'm not going to do anything about, right? And that's becomes a grain of sand, right? It's a hiding. And so to be able to have a kind of safe space to communicate these kinds of things, and I feel like this opens the doorway for more freedom to express who we truly are and know that it's safe to feel things,
Yeah.
So
I think that that is the crux of some of this monogamy versus non-monogamy things. Is in monogamy you have this very understood guide of how you react and what is allowed, and even if you fall outside of that in your thoughts and your desires, you act within the boundaries that you're supposed to act. And so we have a lot of people in our culture that, they publicly they are committed to their partners and they have affairs. That's just, the way that they practice monogamy is through deceit. But the opportunity of types of openness is that you can build true trust and connection by being truly honest and saying, I am having these desires, whether I act on them or not. I am finding this person attractive. I am feeling these things. And, when it's good, even if it's scary to hear those things, you recognize, wow, you trusted me enough to tell me this thing, and you could hear this and you still are there for me. And then the connection just gets deeper and deeper. And I remember how scared I was when I had a partner saying, kind of encouraging me to tell me what my thoughts were about a person that I was really attracted to and I really felt a spark with. And I was so scared, that they were going to snap at me or be hurt. I was going to hurt their feelings, and I just so didn't want to bring this tension and uncomfortableness. And then I shared it. They were so happy for me. They thought it was cute, and they encouraged me to ask them out. I did ask the person out, and the person said, "Oh gosh, I don't see you in that way." So I got embarrassed, and then my partner was able to be like, "Oh, it's okay," and console me. But I was like, that built so much trust between us, and I felt so connected to this other human being that was there for me entirely as a human, not with an expectation of my loyalty to them overall.
It takes a high level of communication right there. That's really powerful, Halcyon. Thank you for sharing that. And I really want to honor and acknowledge that the vulnerability that it takes to be able to share something like that, and then also the level of security within your partner at the time for her to feel okay within herself. I think those are some of the ingredients that provide that space for deepening, right? And I feel like the communication, there's a couple of books I want to mention that we'll share. Hopefully, many of you know what nonviolent communication, right? That's a really powerful tool for couples to be able to share things vulnerably in a safe and loving way. And then also the other one is radical honesty. That's a really powerful book to learn how to share these very deep things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it all comes down to like building a foundation of trust. that I'm going to be able to share my feelings or my wants or desires to my partner without the fear of being judged. And that, that can take a while to cultivate, but it's worth cultivating. And once you get to that place um, where you just feel like you can trust your partner and your partner feels the same about you, that just opens up. And that's why I think a lot of people are starting to find their ways into different forms of relating, aside from monogamy, where they're like, well, no, I trust my partner. I can voice my desires. I'm not going to act on them, but I feel like I feel safe enough to voice them and also like to the point where, well, I actually do have desire for this person, and what would that look like if we were to act on that? Is there space in this relationship for that? And there often isn't, unless there is a foundation of trust. The idea that you can have some sort of, a connection with somebody, and it doesn't threaten the relationship, and quite the contrary, it actually expands the relationship, where you're able to, like we were talking about before, where one person doesn't have to be everything to the other person. It's like, no, I'm actually allowed to, get my needs fulfilled, from somebody outside of the relationship, and it doesn't take away from the primary relationship. And it's not always sexual. Like there's the idea of, well, this is my sports boyfriend. My husband doesn't enjoy rock climbing or doesn't enjoy water skiing or snowboarding or what have you. So there's a person I hang out with, which some people would call, oh, that's your friend. It's like, well no, it's like you're allowed to do this thing with somebody else, and there may or may not be an attraction, but it's not a threat to the primary relationship. It doesn't always have to manifest itself sexually. It can just be like, well, I actually really enjoy spending time with this person. I get juiced up from that, not just sexually, but it's like it's great. It's time. It's creating space in the relationship, like we mentioned earlier. We don't have to do everything with our partners or be everything to our partners. We can seek that elsewhere. It doesn't always have to be like, doesn't always have to wind up in the bedroom. It can be, in any realm.
Right. And that's why this deep communication is so important, because we can feel jealousy in all different ways. Some people have no jealousy about physical connections with their partners and other people. Some people have jealousy with emotional connections, even if there's no physical connections. And I definitely know couples that have had real struggles when there is clearly a loving relationship that is growing outside of the marriage. There's no physicalness at all, but it's difficult to have your partner's heart connecting with another person. And you talked about this expansion and this growth, and part of the reason why there's so much growth and expansion is because often it's difficult. In the same way that any sort of growth happens, the first part is hard. When you first hear the news that your partner has desires for someone else or wants to spend time with someone else, that the feelings are rarely, until you're at a really evolved state that I have never been at quite, is the first feelings of like, what? And you kind of got to work through that. And there's this concept of compersion that people talk about, which is this cycle of, you first get this feeling of like a jealousy feeling of maybe a constriction, some physicalness almost of like, and then you look at this relationship, look at the love that you have for this person, and recognize that what real love is, what you really want for this person is their joy and their happiness. And to facilitate the joy of this person you love brings you joy. Mm. And then you get to this other side of like, okay, I went through this compersion. I'm happy for you. Enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, I want to share the most romantic story I ever heard was at a swingers convention, and we were going around the room introducing ourselves, and people had all sorts of descriptions of their relationships. Because the other thing about when you get outside of monogamy is that everything can be different, and you really have to negotiate and figure out what your boundaries are. So like one person, they started and they said, I'm Jack, this is Jenny. Jenny likes other women, so we will meet other women, and I usually watch. Occasionally they'll invite me in, but we have these threesomes, and that's kind of our thing. Next guy is like, I'm Todd and this is Amanda. Amanda likes gangbangs. So we put ads in local swingers paper. 9 to 12 guys will come over and, we've got some basic rules like, they can come on her face. I mean, they can come on her chest or her face, but they can't kiss her. That's kind of my line. No kissing my wife. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. And then the next guy, he's a little bit older. He's like, I'm Michael, and this is Peggy Sue, and I love Peggy Sue more than anything in the world. I would give her anything. And if she wanted a rare peach from the top of a mountaintop, I would swim an ocean, I would climb the mountain, I would bring her that peach. But the one thing I can't give her is that tingly, exciting feeling of a new lover. So I happily give her that. And I was like, oh my God, that's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. And he's talking about letting other men fuck his wife. And it just totally changed my whole concept of openness and non-monogamy.
Wow, so beautiful. I got chills hearing that. That is really special.
Yeah, it was the gangbang part that really got me in the feels. That was that's what my heart was just palpitating. So yeah,
but it's part of the same story because we all have our things,
Of course.
Yeah. Context is key for sure.
And contrast, yeah, absolutely. I'd like to speak to the nature of contraction and expansion that you were speaking to. Just kind of a little echo of that. The deeper we go, the higher we fly. Right? It's like when we're willing to go into some of those like, ooh, edgy feelings, ooh, contraction, like, okay, I'm going to go into it, I'm going to feel it, then there's a likelihood of greater expansion, right? When the tide pulls out, low tide, then it comes back in with even more power and force, right? Is the nature of our experience of this universe. Our hearts do the same thing.
And I think that's what we're all looking for in a relationship is expansion, expanded possibilities. Like what is available to me in my life and experience is expanded by my relationship or by my relationship with this specific person. And sometimes like we're in a relationship and it feels like contraction. Like, well, it's like, wow, my world is actually kind of shrinking based on this relationship. Like my possibilities are reduced by being in this relationship. That's not a good feeling. And I think that's a lot of what brings us to, therapy or coming to conclusions or thoughts like, wow, this relationship's not feeling right. It's like we're feeling that sense of contraction and reduced possibilities. So I think that's what the non-traditional model of relationship, ethical non-monogamy or up to polyamory, which are two different things. They allow an expansion of what's possible in our worlds, and I think that's what everybody's kind of looking for. And this is just one way of going about that.
Sometimes being confined is like being swaddled and is really comfortable, and there's nothing wrong, if a feeling of tight boundaries and very strict monogamous guidelines it can be a beautiful thing. And so it really depends on that's why the communication is so critical, because whether it's getting a gangbang or a 70-year marriage of monogamy, as long as you're on the same page, you can grow in it.
Absolutely. So well said. Yes, communication is a key. And I feel like that's one of the biggest sparks for me in this conversation is the ability to be able to find our way through whatever relating model that we're choosing, whether that's monogamy or dating or poly or marriage, all of it. The communication is such a valuable thing. And I feel very strongly that there isn't training in school. Like it would be so lovely. Imagine if when we all turned 15, 16 and we go into, high school communication class, right? Communication, like how to have a healthy communication with a partner. That's not something that is traditionally taught. We have to learn on our own, and what a gift it is to get to have resources like NVC or different tools to be able to learn how to effectively communicate with the people that we love the most. I think that that's an essential part of expansion.
Yeah, agreed.
I'll leave with my spark is someone gave me the advice that if you're going to dabble in open relationships, you need to get comfortable saying things that other people don't want to hear. You can't protect people and keep your truth in because you're afraid that if you say the truth, they will be bothered by it. You have to trust that the truth is the way through. And even if it does bother them, that is part of the growth towards the deeper trust.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You got a closing spark, Janus?
Gosh. And I don't know. It's every time I think about it, it comes down to the same thing you're saying. Like it all comes down to trust and communication. No matter what, and this maybe it's a little bit more advanced, but it's a spark that has worked for me in my current relationship. Is no matter how crunchy things might get, there's still we both have gotten to a place where we know like we're going through Mordor, but we know we're gonna come out the other side of it. And just having that belief and that knowledge just allows us to trust each other and get to the point where even if communication is like just proving super challenging and we're kind of almost like looping in the same thing, there's been a couple times where we just stop and we're like, can we just like stop fighting right now? Is that possible? And it's like without coming to some sort of resolution about this. And it's like, actually, yeah, that is possible. How about we just not shelve it, but just let it go. And we've actually pulled that off a couple of times and they kind of impressed ourselves and be like, wow, okay, all right, this is good. And it comes down to that trust and knowing that, no matter how our connection will look, the trust is there that we're going to keep going because it's fun. It's more fun than anything else. So yeah, trust and communication. That's the spark that, is working for me for sure.
Man, I when is your book coming out with the title "Can We Stop Fighting"? That's beautiful. Bravo.
Yeah, it's a good one. Good one. Yeah.
Well, before we close out with an affirmation, where can people find you in the world?
Well, I want to also, before we get into that, I think Betsy might have a spark for us. If you, I don't think you shared one yet, did you?
I did. I shared
you do? Okay.
about, I think communication.
Oh, yes, the communication. Yes.
Yeah.
Not about communication. Correct. All right. So yes. So so Betsy, where can we find your goodness out in the world?
Thank you. Well, what my work in the world currently is, it does have to do with communication, but communication with ourselves, right? How do we communicate with the different parts of ourselves? And so I have a journal and a virtual course called the Power Affirmation Journal and virtual course, which is essentially a platform and a tool to be able to cultivate deeper sense of self-awareness of what our thoughts and beliefs are, and a confident strategy to be able to reprogram belief systems that are no longer aligned. So that way we can think more positively about who we are and really create better, healthier relationships with ourselves. And then, of course, then the byproduct is we have healthier relationships with others. So that's on poweraffirmation.com. Type in sparked for 10% off your journal.
Awesome. And I to reiterate that, which we didn't talk too much about here, but all your personal growth is also therapeutic for your relationship. So thank you, Betsy. And speaking of therapeutic growth, where can we find you in the world, Janus?
I have a company it's a nutritional supplement company called NuWorld Nutritionals, and that's spelled NuWorld and Nutritionals. And it's a line of nutritional supplements that are mushroom based, that are all about enhancing your mood, improving your outlook. It affects like all things like neurologically, helps to kind of rewire your brain to to have you see things in a more positive direction. Getting a lot of good results, and people are really enjoying it as a my partner calls it a spa day for your brain, and it's getting good results out there. Getting a lot of good feedback from all sorts of populations, whether it's elderly or teenagers or what have you. So it's definitely worth looking into. It's newworldnutritionals.com, and you can use the code SPARKED for 10% off any of our products.
Awesome. And I am hosting the Hug Nation YouTube channel. Also, I do multiple times a day live streams online, and you can find your way to any of them at links.hugnation.com. And I would love to see you. Betsy, would you close us out with an affirmation?
Yes, I love affirmations. This is a way to focus the mind and infuse our thoughts with the good things that we want to be thinking of. So we'll do a little practice where we close our eyes, hand on the heart if that feels good for you, and just relax with a deep breath. I trust my voice. I trust my voice. I am worthy of love. I allow my heart to expand to new capacities of feeling. I trust my voice. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of evolutionary love. Yes, I am. And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you both. Love you. Thank you, everyone.
Stay sparked.
Stay spark, people.